Could the Utah Jazz be fully prepared to let go of the one and only Walker Kessler, who at one point in this past season was right behind Rudy Gobert when it came to block percentage at the rim when he was on the court? The question becomes, how much validity do the claims have that have been going around the rumor mill? And if so, could we see a trade this offseason? If you're interested in understanding the logic behind it and the possibility of it, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. I will be breaking down as much free agency drama as possible going into this offseason. My name is Wraith Hoops. Let's go ahead and get into this one. The news was originally broken by Yahoo Sports one and only Jake Fisher, who said that fellow NBA teams believe Walker Kessler might be available via trade. He had this directly to say: "There appears to be a wide range of starting caliber big men available for trade. Rival teams believe Utah is willing to engage in trade talks that would part ways with Jazz second-year center Walker Kessler." The most important part to say about that is the fact that it says rival teams. Why rival teams would be in the know regarding what we're going to do with our players, if you're a Utah Jazz fan, is kind of beyond me, to be quite honest. I feel like if you are going to give up an asset as tremendous as Walker Kessler, who was supposed to be a big building block piece of the future, and somebody that was literally at some times on the bench the right-hand man of one Lauri Markkanen, who is your lone all-star on the team, it stands to reason that it really doesn't seem logical for you to go ahead and, for one, release that sort of news that you're willing to trade him to your rivals. But for two, why would you trade him to begin with off of one lone season where he didn't see that leap that everybody was hoping to see? Everybody has a slump every now and then. The most recent case of this was actually one and only Scotty Barnes from the Toronto Raptors, who was expected to burst out of the gates his sophomore year, but didn't end up getting the thing going. Then coming into his third year this past season, he ended up being an all-star because he fixed his shooting woes and was really just being an elite ball handler and playmaker, as well as being the elite defender that we've already known him to be. I don't think that Walker Kessler is obviously in that same situation, considering the fact that he plays an entirely different position and his role on the floor is entirely different. But I do expect him to see drastic improvements. The only thing that makes people kind of want to believe this is for the simple fact that, number one, why would rival teams, plural, all decide to say something regarding another team's individual player that they might have interest in or might not? And also, could it be a bit of bleeding that came from the earlier season issue where Walker Kessler and Will Hardy apparently had a little bit of a disagreement that was important enough to have Will Hardy bench Walker Kessler and cut his minutes for a significant portion of that middle section of the season? I don't think that it was something so magnanimous that it would end up completely tarnishing what he's been able to build in Utah and the fact that he's been considered to be one of the integral building blocks for this team going forward. Because honestly, I'm very fond of him. I would like him to be a little bit more confident in his own jumper. I think that him obviously having previously had Kelly Olynyk and Lauri Markkanen, who are two great marksmen from beyond the arc, now with Olynyk being traded away to, ironically enough, the Toronto Raptors, I think that him being alongside Lauri Markkanen and them being as close as they are off the court and even on the sidelines during games, it just makes sense that he will end up getting his jumper woes solved. And I've actually made a video previously talking about how I saw the improvement in just the overall stroke. There was less of a catapult. There was more of a one motion, two motion kind of hitch going on, which makes things a lot better for him in the long term. That said, we can't sit here and ignore the fact that Walker Kessler did have a down season, as much as I would love to do so. Now, in his rookie season, he played in a total of 74 games. He started in 40 of them, playing about 23 minutes per match. He put together 9.2 points, 8.4 rebounds, 0.9 assists, 0.4 steals, and 2.3 blocks, while shooting 72% from the field and also 51.5% from the free throw line on just 2 attempts a game. Coming into this season, we were expecting a little bit of a minutes increase, and while we did see it at certain spurts during the season, things ultimately did fall through because he just didn't have the spacing ability necessary, and in a lot of situations, he didn't have the ability to stretch the floor, which allowed the floor to be shrunk on guys like your Colin Sextons, your Keontae George, your Chris Dunns, and your Jordan Clarksons, who like to drive and cut into those niche areas around the rim. As a result, he ended up playing in 64 games, also due to injury. He started in 22 this season, played 23.3 minutes per game, averaged 8.1 points, 7.5 rebounds, 0.9 assists, 0.5 steals, 2.4 blocks, and had shot 65.4% from the field, along with 60.2% from the free throw line on 1.5 attempts per game. Overall, his shooting just has to get better. That's the number one thing. If you are a Utah Jazz fan, even though this was a lower tier season than what we were hoping for out of Walker Kessler specifically, I don't think that this is an F tier season for him by any stretch of the imagination. It's only his second year. He still has time to adjust. It was a high level of roster turnover just during the season. Previous this season, they weren't expected to be good. Then they ended up being good. They traded away the pieces and decided to just go ahead and go to a little bit of a soft tank. And you saw a bunch of the young guys like your Taylor Hendricks, your Keontae George, and your Bryce Sensabaugh just get minutes, as well as Kenneth Lofton Jr. and a couple other guys later on at the very end of the year. So Walker Kessler effectively, as the season went on, just lost his opportunities. And when he did have his opportunities, he just wasn't great. He was kind of mediocre sometimes. Other times, he was very good. Now, the fact that Utah ended up having the 30th ranked defense overall last year is going to mar things, understandably so. But I would like to point out that for the most part, he was the balancing act for that second unit when they were good. I don't focus on the games where you started to roll out the rookies and the second year players just to see what you had if you are the Utah Jazz front office, because that's honestly what the second half of the season looked like. I more so judged them on the meaningful games that were played towards that little third to 2/3 of the season, where you saw the guys go from being, if memory serves me right, 7-15 upwards to actually cracking 500 finally. And a lot of those minutes, you had Walker Kessler coming off the bench with Jordan Clarkson and Keontae George, who aren't necessarily the greatest shooters. They aren't necessarily the greatest offensive weapons, at least this season included in their numbers. But also, more importantly, defensively, they were more so liabilities. And you saw that with Kelly Olynyk, who wasn't necessarily great. He was foul prone. And Ochai Agbaji was also a little bit more of a positive on the defensive side of the ball. But basically, Walker Kessler was tasked with holding things down for a second unit that had almost no defense. And he did the job pretty darn well. Overall, his box score plus minus is not nearly as abysmal as most people would assume it to be. And his block rate when he was on the floor was very high. And I honestly have the highest regard for his particular skill set. I would like him to get a little bit of at least a mid-range jumper. I want him to have some sort of gravity, some sort of effect away from the rim. Obviously, you would love for him to have a three-point jumper, but I'm not going to sit there and stress for that. Now, during the first season that he played, I can count the number of threes that he took on one hand, and he went 1 for 3 on them, I believe, giving him his overall shooting percentage of 33.3% from the three-point line. But coming into this season, he shot 0.1 for 0.3 effectively across the entirety of his 64-game sample size. So there was a much larger amount that he had taken, but he just didn't hit them at a high enough clip to make it effective for anybody, because he only hit 21.1% of those three-point attempts. Understandably so, I believe that he will make an improvement. I think he will be impactful coming into this next season. And I don't really see the reason why you would want to trade him so quickly and just give up on him, unless you're eyeing somebody like I've heard some people say Zach Edey. I'm not necessarily the highest on him in his skill set at the NBA level. But if there is a particular big that you see in the draft that you're big on, or if you think that you can pick up somebody else, preferably from another team in a trade situation, then perhaps that's something that you would like to visit if you are Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck in that front office. But I don't think that the disagreement between him and Will Hardy could have been so crazy that we're just going to go ahead and entertain something this outlandish. Again, he did have a down season. We understand that. I would give him probably a C-, a C. I don't know if I would give him a C+, because then we're talking about he did above what was expected ever so slightly, and that's not what I got. I got basically the same numbers as before, just a slightly higher block count, and overall points and efficiency went down along with rebounds. So I do feel as though he is poised to take a step forward and be a better overall player coming into next season, but this offseason is going to be really big. I do believe that he's going to be playing with the summer league a little bit, so we'll see how things kind of look, how confident he is. That will play a big role in my overall evaluation of him coming into next season, but I don't give this trade overall too much thought, because while it is possible that he does get shopped, I think that right now he has too much value to go ahead and just assume it's time to go ahead and throw him away. This is just from my personal opinion. I've read over some different numbers, read over some different articles. James Hansen, also known as Hoops Nerd, actually wrote an article on SLC Dunk. I actually had a short exchange with him on Twitter about it before actually deciding to film this video, because I wanted to get everybody's angles regarding everything. And while it is possible for him to be traded, I just don't think that it makes sense that rival teams are the ones that are first going to drop the news. and that's how we're going to get the information via Jeff Fisher. I do think that if it does end up being that way, then we're going to hear somebody that's an insider for the Jazz specifically talk about the Jazz or talk about the front office deciding that, hey, you know what, we're going to go ahead and shop Walker Kessler. This is not to say that he wouldn't be possibly available, because Danny Ainge has definitely made a lot of teams aware that they are willing to trade people for the right price. And whether you feel positive about that or negatively about that, that's why there's been so much Lowry drama. That's why I've graded different trades that were possible across many of my recent videos on the channel. I have a couple more to go. But I just think that it is possible for Walker to get traded, but I wouldn't give these overall rumors too much merit until somebody that's on the inside of the Jazz or the front office just outright comes out and says, hey, let's get to talking. Because if that doesn't happen, then what are we really discussing right now? We're just listening to the needless prattlings of other grown men that don't really have much business sticking their nose in somebody else's business because they want their player, or they just want to create, I guess, a certain level of disconnect because you understood that Will Hardy and Walker Kessler had a little bit of a beef or a situation that was that left a little bit of an unsavory taste in both of their mouths for the duration of the season. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, I'm always interested. Do you think that Walker Kessler is on the trade block? Do you think that he has the ability to be traded? And if so, do you think that he's worth more than just one first-round draft pick at this point? The Spurs specifically have openly let everybody know that the 8th pick is available for trade for the right price. Do you think that they would be interested in Walker Kessler to pair alongside Victor Wembanyama despite his lack of floor spacing? Or do you think that there's another team that could benefit more so from his shot blocking and rim paint protection than anybody else? As always, it's your boy Ray Hoops. Go and smash that like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe, turn on post notifications, tell a friend about it, share the video. And as always, good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in. I'll get you guys in the next one. Peace.